We love old time worship and our Bible is King James. We are strengthened in the things, we're strengthened in the things, strengthened in the things that remain.
Strength of the Things That Remain podcast. We're glad you're here for another episode. We have the two Cassies back with us, and if you didn't tune into last week's podcast, quit watching this one. Go back and watch it. Go back and watch last week's.
Like and share.
Last week's, and then come watch this one because it'll make this one mean a lot more to you if you heard last week's.
Make sure you share this. People need to hear this.
Yes, share it, like it, all those things. You know, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, listening on the podcast channels. We need to get. This is an important podcast. This has been. Last week's was important. This week's is important. Last week we heard these ladies' stories about substance abuse, how that life, what it led to, how the Lord delivered them out of it, and it was a blessing to my heart. And we're this week going to talk a little bit about people who struggle. No doubt there's parents that'll watch this podcast that have children who are struggling with substance abuse. There's parents, I guarantee you, that are watching this podcast that have children that struggle with substance abuse, but they don't know it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're clueless that it's happening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's going to be people who are currently struggling with substance abuse that are going to watch this podcast, and they're wanting some way out. You know, so we'll touch about on all those three things here very quickly.
Okay.
And first, let's speak to the parents, moms, dads. Let's start with the mom or dad that may be listening to this podcast and they've got kids that are substance abusers, but they don't know it. What are some things that are warning signs that parents should look for that their children may be involved in substance abuse?
Can we back up and start before that?
Okay.
Let's start with the kids. Let's start with preventing the young people from going down that path.
So prior to that, what can the mom and dads do to prevent it? All right, let's start there.
For me, one day, people would ask me all the time, what happened? You had a good life. What happened? The loss of connection. Mm-hmm. Recovery is connection. Mm-hmm. Church is community, wellness is community, the loss of connection. You don't got to play ball. You don't got to run track. You can be in a book club. As long as you can be in your church youth group and be very connected.
Right.
But that isolation and the lack of fitting in leaves that hole.
Right.
Connection.
So parents need to keep their kids connected into a positive community.
Yes.
Right.
Whether it's a church youth group, playing sports, all of these things are positive connections that parents can ensure that their kids are having.
Yeah.
You got to get them out of their bedroom. You know, living in their bedroom 24/7
That's
is
not
bad mojo.
Yeah. And talk to them. You know, talk to your kids.
Right.
I feel like, that's a success for me as a parent, that my children can come and talk to me.
Right.
And will.
Right.
About what's going on.
Uh-huh.
And granted, it wasn't always that way, obviously. I wasn't there a lot of the time. But I feel like as parents, it may be hard for us to hear some stuff.
Right.
But it's kind of like if we don't put ourselves there, if we can't just deal with, make ourselves available for our kids to talk to.
Right.
They're going to go to somebody else or something else.
Yeah.
Right.
You was talking about earlier in the last podcast that you didn't feel like you were, you didn't love yourself. Mm-hmm. You didn't. Did you not feel loved? Did you not feel like they tried to make you feel loved?
I honestly feel like, yes, they loved me, and where I doubted myself so much, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to make me feel it in my own heart.
Yeah.
But they had, it was.
Yeah, I know. In my own life, when I had children, one of the things that I wanted to make sure is that my children knew that I loved them. Mm-hmm. I wanted to make sure they knew that.
Right.
That there was no doubt in their mind that their daddy and I've not always been perfect, but that's been one goal of mine as a parent, to let my girls know that they're my world and that I love them.
Yeah, and that's important.
Yeah, and because I think just like what you were talking about on the last episode, that if we don't, if you're not accepted by your own parents, if you don't feel that way, then you will definitely try to find that somewhere.
Yeah.
And
I
for
mean,
a
that's
young
what it was
lady,
for
a lot
me.
of times for dad, if they don't feel accepted by their daddy,
Yep.
then they'll try to find that acceptance in another man.
Yep.
Am I right about that?
Yep.
And so, and oftentimes that leads to them being in abusive situations and circumstances, even getting involved in drug addiction through a bad relationship. And so, I think it's critical to let our children know that what they mean to us.
Yep.
So sense of community. Let them know that they're loved. That they can be. What else? What else can parents do to try and head off this before it starts?
I was just thinking, yes, we can let them know that we love them, but sometimes they're going to bring stuff to us that we don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Right.
And when that happens, I have to be prepared. Let me use my I statements. I have to be prepared, because as we all know, the real world will bring some stuff that we must be prepared to hear from our kids and prepared to deal with it.
Yep.
Right.
And show that same love, which I need direction for that. I have to get help from the Lord.
I'll tell you one thing I've been hearing through all this is if we're going to prevent our kids from going that way, we better know who they're hanging around.
Yeah.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, both y'all, and I can even testify myself that I don't blame anybody else for the decisions I made. However, I didn't make them alone.
Yep.
I was in a crowd, fit in, or whatever. So it's important
Yep.
that we know who they're associated with.
Yep.
It's important for us
Absolutely.
as adults,
Absolutely.
who we associate with, who we bring into our safe zone.
Absolutely. And that's a good point, because you're really the height of your addiction. You was an adult,
Yep.
right?
Oh yeah,
And so that means a whole lot.
it's part
Yeah.
of recovery too. Is what community we build around. That's
Yeah.
why I said good. I'm glad people are coming,
Right.
because the sense of community. People need support. We all do.
Right. So, talk to us a little bit about, like I said there earlier, we backed up. What are some warning signs that parents can look for that might indicate that their kids are heading down a bad path?
Behavior change. When they have been typically, behaving a certain way, and then they start behaving in a different way, that's concerning. It may not even be substance use yet, but it could be building up to that.
Right.
Isolating, pulling away,
Right.
pulling away from them,
Right.
changing their friend group.
Right.
Huge.
Right. Very good.
Money.
Money.
Yeah, money. I feel like my children have access to money, and if they were to be using more of it or spending it differently, that would be a huge
Yeah, behavior change.
Yes,
That's what I mean. Like
yes,
any kind of
money.
behavior change like
Right.
that.
So when parents see that behavior change, obviously, sometimes the default is stick our head in the sand and make like this isn't happening.
Well,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times they're teenagers.
Yeah.
They're just going through a phase.
But would you say that parents just need to get all up in their business and ask some direct questions
Yeah,
about that?
sure.
and not take no answer as an answer.
Right.
You know, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ask questions, be there, be around where they are.
Yep.
I was the worst teenage mom. I went everywhere.
Right.
I showed up everywhere. I would call and say, I see you, and I would be
Right.
looking. I mean,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
wanted to go youth trips, we went on youth trips.
Right.
Right, whatever. And I'm not saying that was perfect, but really, I felt like I had to know what was going on because
Right.
I know what
Right.
can go on.
Yeah.
And there's this term, what's that called, helicopter mom or whatever, where you're always hovering over your kids. And that's used in a negative way most of the time. Well, you quit being a helicopter mom.
Yeah.
And I do think there's, somewhat of a balance to strike there. But by and large, I think it's better that we engage, be involved, know what's going on, know who our kids' friends are, know what interactions they're having online best that we can. All of those things.
I think
those
that's key.
Two different things, though.
Yeah.
Helicopter mom is trying to make all their decisions, in my opinion,
Right.
and not giving them the freedom to learn how to adapt and do things on their own. Right?
Right.
But you still want to be there to make sure that they're safe
Right.
in doing these
Right.
things.
Right. That
You know?
makes sense.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
need to learn how to call and make doctor's appointments for themselves, learn how to go get their driver's license, take what classes they need.
Right.
Those kinds of things. And when you say helicopter mom, I always think about that, like
Right.
trying to figure their life the way
Right.
I want it to be.
Right. So instead of directing it, you're kind of there as the watching over
Oh, yeah.
safety net,
Oh yeah.
stopping them from doing something that's going to hurt them.
Hopefully.
Really, you think about the Lord, and that's how the Lord treats us, right?
Cross alongside.
He gives the commands that he gives in the Bible really are, don't do these things that'll hurt you. That's really what the commands are. Don't hurt yourself. These will hurt you. These things you're going to do, these will hurt you if you do. But he allows us to have a free will and make our own decisions inside those parameters.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about seeing behavior change. We've talked about way money is spent. Anything else that parents should look for that would be indicators?
Well, and I feel like it's important for parents to be aware. I think there's a lot of, in my life looking back, and I see it in other people, it's like we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And I'm not saying dwell on the things that are going on around us because,
Right.
I don't feel like that's helpful either.
Right.
But to just know
Right.
that this isn't, this could happen. This is an issue.
Right.
And it's happening to your neighbor down the street,
Right.
and it would be remiss to think that it could never happen
Okay.
in your
You
home.
know what
Yeah.
comes to mind? We have heroin here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just say that
People
out
are
loud.
using intravenous fentanyl on purpose here.
Right.
Here.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, when we were like heroin wasn't here, I'd be dead
Yeah.
if heroin had been
Yeah.
here.
Same.
Straight up.
To think that it could not happen to your child.
It does
Yeah.
not.
Could not happen to your
discriminate.
family.
Yeah.
That's asking for it to happen.
Yeah.
Addiction does not discriminate. Anytime I see someone who is completely, my kid would never do that. I don't know what's wrong with y'all. I
Right.
got to start praying for him.
What about if if okay, let's say a kid makes a mistake. They get in a party, and they take a drug. I think, okay, especially a kid that knows better. Okay, they know they've done wrong, but they're afraid to tell anybody, afraid to tell their parents because they're afraid the parents are going to just, flip out.
Yeah.
How do you build that relationship to where, they're all right to come and say, look, I messed up.
Well, you got to really be okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
And that's a struggle. That's
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
Right.
I love my kids no matter what they do,
Yeah.
and I will help you.
Yeah.
Just come to me.
Right. Right.
That's a good way of putting it. I like it.
Yeah. So, to the parents that are watching, and for whatever reason, the kids they've got a kid that's a substance user. Okay, at whatever level it is, they're a substance abuser. What are some helpful things? What can moms and dads do? What has impact on users? What have you guys seen that other people can do that has impact?
First thing, and hop in, I think about natural consequences of our behavior. When we have natural consequences, that doesn't mean, like we talked about, tough love. That just means if you do these actions, these things are going to happen, both positive and negative.
Right.
And preventing the consequences from happening to our children, it's not always helpful.
So don't
As
bail
much-
them out.
And I wouldn't pretend to tell anybody what to do with their kid.
Right.
Really.
But I've seen from the-
consequences are consequences.
I've seen from the law enforcement side, we put somebody in jail. And I think, thank God, that's the best place for them.
Yes.
Because they're going to get off their... But moms get hearts touched. In a few days, they come bail them out. And I'm thinking, oh, they're killing this kid. They need to leave them in jail.
They think jail's the worst thing. It isn't.
Right.
Living that way is the worst
Yeah.
thing. It is a horrible, it's a self-made prison. At least when you get locked up, you have a release date.
Well,
This
I've
is a
heard,
horrible way.
I've had parents tell me that I know where they're at.
Oh, absolutely.
When they were in addiction or drugs,
Absolutely.
I didn't know I didn't know if I had a place to sleep. I didn't know if I had food to eat. I had no idea. But when they're locked up,
Yeah.
I know
They're
that they
okay.
got food.
Right.
I know they got a place to sleep.
Yep.
I know where they are.
The
Yeah.
purest form of love.
Yeah, and you know, I know. So, you know, and I've seen a lot of young kids in juvenile facilities that they get in, and really their mindset is, I'm going to get out of this.
Yeah.
My dad's going to get me out.
Right.
My parents will get me out of this.
Yeah.
And if you're
Yeah.
lucky, that ends
And there's an arrogance
quicker
there.
than later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, do whatever you want to do. I'm getting out of it.
Right. Right.
You know.
So one thing is to not remove them of those consequences. They need to face those natural consequences for their actions.
Yes.
That's a positive thing.
Yes.
What other positive things can parents do for those children?
You can love them right there
Right.
where they are. You don't stop loving them. We don't stop.
You don't have to condone what they're doing. You don't have to like what they're doing. You don't have to support what they're doing.
Right.
You still love them.
But, you know, we're called to love people.
Right.
Not just our children, but as a community.
Right.
Love people regardless if their behaviors are
Hard to love.
hard to love and frustrating and
Yeah. When it's your kids,
Despicable.
though, you love them anyway. When I feel like when it's your kids, you look at them, you see them as that little kid, even if they're adult.
Yeah.
You know.
True that.
And it's hard to see,
Yeah.
you know, that the fact that your kid is there and they're not there.
Right.
That's not who you raised.
Right.
You know. So I mean, it's tough. That's tough.
Right.
And I will tell you that, you know, I've talked about the fact that my parents cut me out, like, that we're done with you. You know, I really feel like they didn't stop loving me.
Right.
They just weren't going to support what I was doing.
Right.
And at the time I was bitter about it, you know.
Right.
But now I'm thankful. Because if they would have enabled me, I would probably be dead.
It makes me think of that message that Brian McBride preaches on the first prodigal.
Oh yeah.
And how that the Lord, so he preaches this message about Adam and Eve. They were the first prodigals, and how God treated them. And there's too much into that to get into all that, but he did say God didn't write them off.
Yeah.
He gave them a provision, a way to make things right, way to straighten things up, you know. And that's important as a parent, that, like you say, love them where they're at. That they know there's the road always leads home. If they want to walk the road home, the road is the door's open, the road's there.
They're gonna have to do right.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think it's
Getting out there and chasing them. Like, just like with the prodigal son. Dad wasn't out chasing him,
right,
but he was
waiting.
standing there waiting.
right,
Yeah.
And the Lord sets that example for us
yeah, yeah,
every day. He loves us, and I certainly don't.
right. Any other advice? I mean, did at any point did someone say something, do something during that you thought, wow, that really made an impact on
Yep.
me?
Yes.
What was said or done that you felt like made an impact when you were
I was
struggling?
waiting for you.
Oh,
I know what
okay.
you're gonna say.
I always remember kindness. But I remember when we were going to the clinic, and I say we because we both were at the methadone clinic. There was this woman there who was kind of in charge. She was in charge position, and everybody would talk about her and say, you know, she's so hateful.
Right.
You know, and the guys thought she was beautiful. She was so hateful and, you know, just really strictly business stuff. Well, one day my counselor wasn't there, and I had to see a counselor, and I saw her. And she told me, she said, you know, Cassie, you could run this place one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. She saw that in me then.
Right.
And I was so sick. And I was like, you know, but that stuck with me, like that belief that,
Right.
you know, I could be something else.
Right.
That there was some remnant of something left.
And this is probably a whole different podcast, but because you brought it up, methadone clinics. Are you guys a fan? Are you a foe? How do you feel about methadone clinics?
Having frequented several methadone clinics, cut the ribbon on 2 at the opening ceremony in Boone and Marion, myself. Methadone may have kept me alive. I don't know.
Right. Jury's still out on how you feel about it exactly?
No. No. Methadone is one of the hardest things that I've ever come off of in my entire life.
So you just addicted you felt like you just got addicted to something.
It's past that. It's worse.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to quit. And it's like if you have other substance use problems, and we both did, you can't continue going there. You know, it's not like, I mean, they're going to say, I've heard this twice, we're involuntarily detoxing you today.
Right.
You know?
My confliction is I have seen people who go there and they actually, their lives do improve. You know, they do go to work.
Right.
I'm not one of those people.
Right.
Same.
Neither was Cassie.
And that's been my experience too. I mean, I have dealt with that side a lot.
Yeah, and that's where this comes from too. But also there are different ways. There's different paths to recovery, and I try very hard not to, make judgments for other people.
Yeah,
I really do. But for myself, it was not helpful.
Right. That's good information. It's good information. Yeah. So somebody showed hope in you. You never did. You never have forgot that.
Right.
What else? Anything else that you can think of that someone said, did, that was a positive influence?
Honesty. I don't care what you had to tell me. If you told me the truth.
Joey.
I was thinking.
He would always tell us the truth. Whether we wanted to hear it or not.
I hope he's listening.
I saw him this morning. I started to turn around and go back.
Did you? Yeah. He hated us all together. He didn't choose. And that's not really true. He doesn't. He doesn't hate. But when Joey told you something, it was the truth. He didn't go on and on. He didn't yell and tell you were stupid. And
so would you guys say that your interactions with law enforcement during all of this, for the most part, were positive interactions?
Lots of positive interactions.
Yeah. I've never been handcuffed and put in the back of a cop car. Never. Right. But I've never been like out of sorts. Right. You know, I would ride in the front and talk to them. Right. I was guilty. I knew I was. I was raised to know that.
Right. But you always felt like law enforcement had your best interest ultimately at heart to try to help.
Oh, I don't know that I felt that then, but now I do. I kept saying, why is this happening to me?
I didn't have the same experience. I rode in the back of a bunch of cars.
There you go.
With lots of handcuffs and foot shackled.
But ultimately, it took the grace of God.
Yes,
absolutely.
Ultimately, it takes the grace of God.
Yeah. I was always likable, though. Remember I said that? I was always a likable person. People liked me. It wasn't that. It was me that didn't like me.
Right.
Yeah.
I had lots of positive interactions with the Sheriff's Department. And since I've been sober, especially here in Yancey County, but that's just where I am.
Right.
The way that they treat me is a testament to how this county is being governed, being run, whatever.
Right.
Do you hear me? They welcome me back. They treat me as if I am welcome because I am.
Right.
I am.
Well, I can honestly say,
say,
sitting on the other side, sitting in those offices all those years, all I ever saw out of law enforcement was they wanted people to do better. They just wish people would do better.
Yeah, it gets frustrating.
Yeah.
We're not easy to deal with. Been up for 3 days. Talking crazy, trying to run over people. There's no tailing, and that's frustrating.
So let's speak to the addict that may be watching. Okay. If they've tuned into this podcast, unless somebody is sitting there making them watch it, they're at least interested in getting out of that lifestyle. What's step one?
Admitting it. I mean, that's step one of the 12 steps, is admitting it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just really acknowledging it. I mean, and telling somebody, like saying, reaching out for help.
Right.
You figure a lot of people don't realize. I mean, they deceive themselves, lie to yourself. And I don't really have a problem.
Oh, you do for a long time, and then you're like, well, I'm not as bad as them, and so
Yeah.
you're finally the worst person you know, and
Right.
then you'll still try to lie, and then one day, hopefully, the
If you
scales
live
fall
long
off your eyes.
If you
You're
live
like,
long
oh
enough.
yeah,
Absolutely.
if you live long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like if you don't have any trauma before you have substance use hang around.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, because it's hard life, it's hard living. I feel like if anybody's been in it for any length of time, there has to at least be a part of them that wants to change,
Mhm.
even if they don't talk about it openly.
Because at some point they look at their life and go, "Wow, this is not much for life."
Yeah, well, you're at the mercy of other people. You trade all of yourself, your values, your morals, the way you were raised, your family, your body, whatever it is. You
Everything.
trade everything for drugs. I mean, you just sacrifice it all for
Right.
that.
Right.
I mean, it's a heavy price tag.
Right.
Yeah, and whoever they are, wherever they are, whether they know they have a problem or whether they want to admit it, doesn't matter. They don't have to stay there.
Right.
You don't have to stay there.
Yeah, you can get off the path at any time. You can
Yes,
change.
yes.
Change drugs
And if you
anytime.
fall back off, as long as you're breathing,
Right.
call.
Yeah.
Call, please call.
Yeah.
And that's how we always feel when people go, we're just happy to know they're alive.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not, we're not mad. Please
Right.
call. Come back. Come back. You can't fall off too many times unless you die.
So I imagine in about every community, well, maybe not every community in America, but in our area, there's probably some sort of drug counseling that they can reach out to, right? Is it pretty prevalent?
I don't know. There's never enough. I always feel that way. Because we do. And if you want it bad enough, you
So
can
what
get
would be
there.
the first step to somebody that's like, okay, I'm done with this. I want some drug counseling. Now, obviously, with this podcast, we know that we're talking about the Lord changing people's lives and all that. And that is the paramount important thing. But somebody's just watching this podcast and they're like, I am done living this life like this. Obviously, they go to church Sunday and get in an altar and get saved. The Lord will bring them out of it. That is, but if they're going to reach out for counseling, how do they even start that?
Oh,
You know,
just-
Yeah.
Just call a clinic.
Yeah.
Just call Mountain Community Health Partnership, any of our clinics.
Yeah, you can
And
call
if-
the clinic. I mean, you can go.
if you lived outside of this area.
Okay, so you can go to Asheville. There's a place called C3 at 356. They do assessments right there on the spot, and they'll get you linked up with some detox rehab stuff.
Right.
There's Turning Point right across the mountain.
Wherever
City,
anybody's
walk
at,
out.
they probably can Google
Yeah.
Right.
a counselor, drug, and find
Yeah.
whatever's in their area.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That is right. But
Yeah.
you know what's most important? More important than that is having a community
Right.
that they feel like will support them with that.
Right.
Because that is shameful, like, especially for somebody who their actions aren't showing out.
You know, when the Lord changed your life and you got saved, and the Lord changed your life, and of course you was in jail. Did you have detox? Okay. What about you? Did you?
Oh my gosh, I was so sick. I didn't go to.
Yeah.
I detoxed in Yancey County.
The reason I asked that is because I've heard testimonies of others before, and God saved them and delivered them and changed them, and they didn't have any detox
Oh,
whatsoever.
no, I didn't have any withdrawals over there. For some reason.
But I've heard other stories. You know, God saved them, God delivered them, but their body, withdraw, and that's a battle. And you know, I didn't really have any withdrawals when I came off drugs, but I can imagine that would make the. I've got a good friend of mine. He's in the ministry now, and God delivered him. And I think he said there was several months there that he really struggled physically.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's very real.
And,
if you don't know that, you get that same attitude. Why don't you just quit?
Yeah,
Why don't you just stop?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you can get to a place where they can make
but it's odd because you know everybody's different. You know, wonder why some do and some don't have withdrawals,
The
you
Lord
know.
knows exactly what we need.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
He does.
And,
He knew
uh,
I needed to be still for 26 months, and he knew he could deliver her in that moment. She could walk out.
Right.
And I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're
I
fine.
feel pretty
You-
strongly about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you felt like the Lord had to let you go through that time of withdrawal to get you to a place where you wasn't going back.
Yeah, he did, and he had to hold me still
Yeah.
after I got that out of my system. Absolutely. And when people say they have to be in a hospital, they have to this, there's nothing that can stop the Lord.
Right.
There's many ways, there's many paths to recovery. And whatever that looks like, it won't stop him from doing a thing.
right.
It won't.
Yeah.
And the withdrawal, the physical withdrawal is very, very real.
Right.
Yeah.
Very.
Yes, they're horrible. I've had them before. I just didn't have them this time.
Right. You know,
And
I've
See
seen
what
it.
I mean?
I've seen it in the jail.
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
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 Terrible.
If you do, yeah, you see people. My mother used to work in a drug rehab clinic, and
She
I've-
knows too.
I've seen it. I used to visit there, visit her, and I've seen it there. I've seen it in jail, prison ministry through the years. I know it's real.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do know God's able to deliver and break that, and people not have that. I do know that He's able to do that, but sometimes He don't do it that way.
I'm thankful you brought that up because I feel like sometimes people in the church, who is me today, they think, God can heal you, you just don't have enough faith. And that you don't need all that medical stuff. Just come on
Right.
to the altar. But the Lord tells us to repent and do no more. He doesn't say, come here and I'll fix everything
Right.
this moment.
Well,
doesn't say
there's
that.
consequences for sin.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And drugs affect the body not only mentally but physically.
Yeah.
And sometimes when the Lord save an individual, He forgives them of their sin. Then their body still has to go through the consequences
Yeah.
of the actions that they put it through for so many years.
Absolutely.
And sometimes God chooses to do it different ways.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, all great information. Before we get done, if you had, you're sitting here and you're talking to somebody that's on drugs today, you're going to say one thing to them. What's your piece of advice? What would you say to that person that's tuned into this podcast? Maybe everybody knows they're on drugs, maybe nobody knows. What do you say to them?
You don't have to stay there.
Yeah.
Regardless of what your situation is, you do not have to stay there. You can call. We will walk alongside you. As long as there's a breath, there's always hope.
Yeah.
And, we were saved. Just one. If one person turns their life and goes down a different path, then what I lived through was worth it. That's what I was called to do, was to tell somebody else that you don't have to stay there.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yep.
You don't.
And what you guys are doing is so much the Lord's work. You look through the Gospels and you see all the despised and the downtrodden, and it's who He came to reach,
That was us.
Yeah, but now you're reaching those people.
What about,
We love
okay,
them.
so advice to those that are in it. What about somebody that's just maybe some young person, maybe somebody in a bad relationship, maybe somebody in your situation, and they're either thinking about or starting to dabble in drugs? What would you tell them? They ain't an addict yet, but they're thinking, they're heading, they're starting that, starting to use, or even being tempted in a party with a bunch of young people.
Yeah. Well, I think when you're young, it's hard to see, ahead. I think it's hard to see ahead any time.
Sure.
Looking back, hindsight's 20/20, right? But there are some substances, and you can take them knowingly or unknowingly. It happens all the time.
Right.
One time it can hook you and ruin your life, and it will, absolutely. One time you could die.
Right.
Period. And that is what we're looking at. There's drugs out there that kill people the first time they use them.
Right.
Oh, I just saw that trailer that I was staying in with the windows all blacked out with no running water and no power and no money and no food and dirty. You can take a bath. I think about that.
Yeah, that's where it'll take you.
That is what, if you live.
Yeah, or to the grave.
If you live.
Every single time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's not the robbed, raped, beat up, all the exploitation you suffer, all that stuff in between.
And nobody escapes that. Nobody escapes it. Once they get in it, that's the road
Yeah.
they're on.
Yeah.
That's the destination.
We
If
talk
you
to
say-
people.
I've been studying. I mean, I think we gotta quit. But I've been studying in the Book of James, and sin, when it's finished, it bringeth forth death.
Yep.
And James is writing under the inspiration of the Holy Ghost, and he uses illustrations all the way through the book. And in that instance, he is using the illustration of a conception and a birth.
Right.
When it conceives, it bringeth forth. Same terminology used when Mary brought forth a son.
Right.
And so when a woman conceives a child, she brings forth that child.
Right.
But when sin is conceived, it will bring forth
Right.
death.
Yep.
We are
It
also
will.
studying James.
It'll
The
bring
Christian
forth death.
Handbook.
Yeah, bring forth
Yes.
death. And without exception.
Without exception.
Without exception.
People come to us and they say, "Oh well, I've been doing drugs for years, but I've never committed adultery.
Right.
Or I've never used a needle."
Right.
Yeah, well, stay in it and see
Stay
what
in it.
happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, because it's coming.
Right.
It's
All
just a
those-
matter of time.
Yeah.
And I think, you was talking about, there are some drugs that if you take, you could die. When I was talking earlier off camera that I had heard that my whole life, but when I took those drugs and didn't die, it gave me courage to do it again.
Yeah.
Promise you it'll take you that
But it
further.
will. It may not happen that first time,
Well, there's drugs now
but it will
that law
eventually.
enforcement officers get on their skin and it kills them. They didn't even,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Fentanyl,
purposely.
fentanyl,
Yeah.
Deadly.
Yeah. It's just
It's a
bad.
it's a path that nobody.
It's so powerful.
Nobody
That's what Satan
wants
uses
to go down.
Destroy our
And I wouldn't
families.
count on the people I'm hanging around to save me with Narcan.
Right.
I mean, and I'm not saying they wouldn't,
Right.
but everybody's probably messed up.
Right.
So that's not a safe.
And I've administered Narcan and, and seen all that process happen several different times. But, and I'm a believer in Narcan. I've seen it work with my own eyeballs. It works. But sometimes I wonder if that don't give a safety net. Is that what you're saying? Maybe they think, well, somebody will Narcan me.
They'll have Narcan. People typically, I mean, there's a lot of people out there, they'll just have Narcan with them. And, I heard, yes. that
Lazarus
happens.
party.
Yeah.
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 And still, I'll never step over.
And
your
so what's
kid.
the idea? They got Narcan.
And
They
not
say,
Narcan.
hey, look, if I overdose, somebody get that and give it to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
Or if
you're-
they see someone they're
Right.
with,
But you're saying do not count on that.
Yeah, because, and I'm not saying they're necessarily trying to be harmful or wicked.
They could die before you do.
It's like,
They could
they
die.
would have saved us. I mean, like,
Heavens,
we were
nobody, 'cause they would have
prepared
robbed
to know if
us.
someone was dying.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
we were out, like vacant.
Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of other people
Right.
because I was too sick.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Good information.
sure.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much for having us.
I think it's been two great podcasts. I think it's going to provide so much crucial information. And I just want to say I so appreciate the work y'all doing.
Thank you so
Keep
much.
up the good work.
Thank
Because,
you.
and I know there are probably times that you guys feel like the little boy with his finger in the dam and the water's coming through everywhere else. But if you can just plug up one hole at a time,
Yeah.
just do what you can.
And keep praying for those loved ones.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't give
God's
up.
God's
Don't
able.
give up.
Ever.
God's
Yes,
able. Keep
He
praying.
is.
Don't give up.
Keep praying.
All right. Till next time, strengthen the things that remain. We'll see you then.